This last Super Bowl halftime show didn't just entertain people. I believe it revealed something. And depending on who you asked, it'll either reveal how far culture has drifted or exposed how desperate many people are for an alternative that feels meaningful, maybe even family-friendly. Because the halftime show used to be something that families would watch together without bracing themselves. And now it seems like it's just something that parents will actively prepare for or turn off altogether. This year was no different. Massive production, flawless choreography, world-class performers, and at the same time, a growing sense that what is being celebrated on the biggest stage in America feels further removed from anything that resembles human flourishing. But what made this year different? What made it different wasn't just the controversy, but it was the response, the continued response that seems to be growing every year. This year sparked some more mainstream alternatives, and I believe this raises a bigger question than whether or not we like the Super Bowl halftime show or not. Are we actually offering something better? Or might we just be swapping one broken piece of culture with another? Stick with me. This isn't outrage bait, it's discernment. At least that's my goal here. And if this conversation connects with you, if you resonate with the tension here, you might want to hear it all the way through. Welcome back to JSM, More Than Music. If you're new here, my name is Josh Snyder. I'm an independent music artist that believes life goes way deeper and far beyond a stage and viral moments. This space exists for people who want to think clearly at the intersection of faith, culture, music, and the arts in general. People who know we are called to live in this world, but not of this world. Welcome, spacewalkers. Let's talk about the halftime show at the Super Bowl and some of the alternatives. Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime performance was undeniably impressive from a production standpoint. The choreography, the timing, the movement through the maze-like set, all of this seemed to be pretty well executed, and this, of course, doesn't happen by accident. Hundreds of people worked on this performance behind the scenes leading up to it, and at first it felt like maybe it was a win. The first few moments of that video, maybe. But as the performance continued, the tone shifted very quickly and not subtly. The imagery became overly sexual, women twerking everywhere. Imagery moved from artistic expression to raw sensuality. I don't speak Spanish, so I turned on captions. And what I realized what the song was actually about, it wasn't vague. It was very blunt. A single guy looking for as much sex as possible. But this is the biggest family-viewed sporting event of the year, and yet the messaging is anything but family-oriented. Surprising? Not really. And so naturally, people leading up to this were beginning to look for major alternatives, and I think this has been growing over the years. Enter the Turning Point USA halftime show. The Good Fight.
The Good Fight, baby.
The Good Fight.
I'm Erskine with Erskine Music.
Hey, what's up? This is Josh with Josh Snyder Music.
What do we got coming out February 13th?
The Good Fight.
If you want to support this song in a real, tangible way,
Share it with everybody.
You're the undefeated champion. Battle rages, but the war is won. I'm in the good fight. Jesus, help me fight right. You're the undefeated champion.
The Good Fight drops everywhere February 13th on all platforms. Enter the Turning Point USA halftime show. On paper, this sounded like exactly what many people were asking for. A cleaner option, a more family-friendly alternative. Something that felt safer, more familiar, and even branded as faith-centered. The lineup included artists like Jason Aldean and Kid Rock. And much of the early portion leaned heavily into what people would call good old boy American culture. Songs about drinking, heartbreak, cheating, rebelling, and living free. A heavy dose of nostalgia aimed at the early 2000s country and rock. But here's where the tension intersects in this. Nestled inside a lot of that good old boy culture is a very different version of Jesus for many people. A Jesus who gets Sunday mornings, but not Friday nights. A Jesus who is fine with most of your life as long as you acknowledge him once in a while through a simple prayer. A very shallow cultural Christianity that feels familiar but doesn't call anyone to actual transformation. And then the show took a turn. At first, Kid Rock appeared briefly in Kid Rock form, loud, raw, familiar. Yes, I know he was lip-syncing to his own song, but then seemingly out of nowhere, the show transitioned to a long cello violin set, longer than Kid Rock's set. At the time, it felt disjointed, like the momentum had dropped or the program lost its footing altogether. But then something clicked.
Please welcome our brother, Robert Ritchie.
They introduced Robert Ritchie. Robert Ritchie is Kid Rock's given name, and the song that he performed next was noticeably different. Less brash, less rebellious, more reflective. It carried strong messaging about loving your family, seizing the moment, and doing what matters now. And then in the final verse that he added, it became distinct. A clear call to give your life to Jesus before it is too late.
There's a man who died for all our sins, hanging from the cross. You can give your life to Jesus, and he'll give you a second chance till you can't.
Looking back, the transition made a little bit more sense. Shift from country rock, to a little bit more of a bluegrass-styled country became intentional. Almost like they were trying to show two versions of the same man, the persona and the person. The old man image and the man stepping into something publicly new. And honestly, that moment was pretty powerful for me to watch. It gave weight to the ending, especially with the Charlie Kirk memorial that it was prepared with right at the end of it all. Faith, family, freedom. It was all there. But here's where I still can't let this go. And not to nitpick for the sake of nitpicking. Hold on. Even with that strong ending, the majority of the event had already been spent promoting the same types of lifestyle patterns that we critique in the mainstream culture, just packaged in a different way. Heavy drinking, cheating narratives, sexual promiscuity, living for self all week, and maybe tipping your hat to Jesus on Sunday. And that's the core issue for me. I think it should be for you if you're a believer on the other end of this. If an organization explicitly centers itself on Christ and positions itself as a moral alternative, the goal simply cannot just be a little better. If most of the music still platforms lifestyles that are still not conducive to human flourishing, we are sending mixed signals. To the world, it looks hypocritical. To shallow Christians, it reinforces the idea that following Jesus doesn't actually require dying to self. And to those genuinely searching, it muddies the waters of what it means to pick up your cross and follow Christ. Trading one set of sins for another doesn't get us closer to truth, ultimately. It's still robbing Peter to pay Paul. Different packaging, same outcome. I don't want to sound brash here, but I think this has to be really thought through. And just a quick side note, at the end of it all, I would prefer Turning Point USA's halftime show over Bad Bunny's halftime show all day long. Not because it was in Spanish, not because there were some things that were a little outside of my preferred music genre, but because objectively it was further up the spectrum in regards to what is detrimental to human flourishing and what is not. But that does not justify continuing to platform, even in the name of nostalgia and good old boy type American apple pie and baseball theology, if you are openly trying to say, hey, we are Christ honoring, we want to honor God, we want to honor our families and our country, but then turn around and still platform and allow the platform to be used to promote, that's what it's doing, promote alcoholism, sexual promiscuity, and shallow Christianity. I don't know if the ending of that is going to be much more positive than the ending that we find for people following movements and lifestyles that Bad Bunny and people like him promote in their music. I think we as the church need to be better than that. Not that we have to be perfect, but we should hold ourselves to a higher standard. We should scrutinize ourselves within our own ranks more harshly than we do the world even, because the world is being the world. We are the church, the body, the extension of who Christ is in this world today. And so we shouldn't strive for just a little better. We should strive for total surrender. And if that means sticking out like a sore thumb sometimes or not putting all of the nostalgia on blast, that's okay. Something like picking up your cross and following him sometimes means that. My good friend Erskine from Erskine Music actually put together his own halftime show, Alternative. Original music, solid production, clear presentation of the gospel, and no compromising of messaging, and still striving to do the best that he could within a very tight budget. to share his heart. When I talked to him earlier, his heart was simple. He said,
Just felt like a break point of people who were wanting to say, we don't want this halftime show anymore. And so you have a whole group of people who are going and looking elsewhere. I want to jump into that as quickly as possible and say, hey, while you guys are looking for other options that are out there, I want to give you an option, and I can't think of a better option to give you than express my talents and then share Jesus with you in the midst of all of that.
how you like that rocket fuel? This felt different. Not necessarily reactionary, not trying to outdo the NFL, but just trying to be faithful, to be intentional, to be cohesive and coherent in his faith. And I think that's where a lot of this is headed. We're probably going to see more artists offering their own alternatives. Not because they're trying to compete in a direct sense, but because people are genuinely hungry for something to fill that spot that doesn't feel like they're just going to a strip club with better lighting. It doesn't mean that every attempt will land, but it does mean that people are trying to wrestle with how to create, reach, and communicate without selling their souls in the process. At the end of the day, the Super Bowl halftime show is just a snapshot, but it reveals something far deeper. A culture that is searching for meaning. The church that wrestles with how to respond to this very large cultural movement surrounding the Super Bowl, the biggest sport in American history. I believe God is inviting us to step into this tension with clarity and courage. And this only happens when we're not super reactionary. If this conversation resonated with you, if you connected with it, I'd love for you to subscribe and lock arms with us. We're trying to build something deeper here. Something that goes beyond the stage, goes beyond the music, goes beyond the content, but a community that desires to follow God intentionally. I genuinely would love to hear where you land on this. Comment below, and thanks again for rocking with Josh Snyder Music, where we've been always about so much more than music.